A rival baseball player once said of him, "He can beat you more ways than any man alive." His daring play earned him a place in baseball's Hall of Fame. But in his brilliant career, he became one of the most controversial sports figures of our time. Biography, our story, Jackie Robinson. He was the first Negro to play Major League Baseball. An aggressive competitor, he asked no quarter and gave none. But he won the admiration of players and fans alike with his skill and daring. From the very first, he made it clear that he wanted to be accepted on the basis of his ability. "I came here," he said, "to play baseball." On April 15, 1947, at Ebbets Field in Brooklyn, Jackie Robinson makes his first appearance as a Major League Baseball player and shatters a half-century of tradition.
50 years ago, we know Jackie Robinson signed with the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1946. But what occurred more than 50 years earlier, and what does this have to do with Celoron, New York? Vince McNamara. His name is synonymous with the Pony League and now the New York Penn League. He was an umpire in the formative years, and he became president in 1949 and was its leader for over 37 years. Though raised in Buffalo, Vince played on the Jamestown Billy Webb Spiders in the 1930s. He was their star shortstop. Vince gives us some clues regarding the question of Celoron and black baseball.
Much. May I remain sitting?
Yes, please do.
I've got to confess to you people that I've been negligent about reading a book that was given to me about 5 years ago. And knowing I was coming down here to be with you today, and I talked with Mike Maloney, I said, "What the hell do they want me to talk about, Mike?" He said, "I don't know." So I started putting some things together. And I went and got this book off the rack. I don't know who gave this to me. Only the Ball Was White, written by a guy named Peterson. Joe Overfield knows him very well. In fact, Joe has a picture. He has a picture in here that Joe Overfield gave him in this book. I called Joe about it. This guy's one hell of a writer. And the thing that struck me so forcefully about this guy, just coming through this book, they talk about Celoron was a village on Chautauqua Lake about 3 miles west of Jamestown in southwestern New York, whose sole claim to attention was a big amusement park. I remember that very well. On the Decoration Day, we would go out there, put on our uniforms, and parade from Celoron Park over to the ballpark, which was just around the corner. And we would not get paid for that day down there. We'd take that money, and Billy Webb would invest it in rain insurance. So we never got raised that down there. I remember that. But the village was their Chautauqua Assembly, a collection of summer schools offering education and entertainment. Chautauquans who worried of the cultural life would go down the lake by steamboat and enjoy the more plebeian amusement itself, including the Acme Giants. That was the team that played here for Jamestown. And here it is here. Celoron Bonfire, that's what they call it. You got murdered the first day of it. Bradford was in that league too, but this goes way the heck back. And I was so sort of proud to have been a part, having been associated with so many of these fine ball players. Satchel Paige, every time I looked up, he was some of our probably throwing fast balls at me. Or running in the outfield and grabbing a ball.
My name is Robert Peterson, and I am the author of Only the Ball Was White, which is a history of Negro baseball before Jackie Robinson. It covers the years between the beginning of the 20th century and 1946, when Jackie Robinson became the first admitted black player to play in the organized leagues of baseball. In researching that book, I discovered that Jamestown is worth a large footnote in the history of Negro baseball because it was receptive to black players at a time when most cities were not.
After the Civil War, the United States, the land of the Emancipation Proclamation, and the Declaration of Independence, encouraging freedom of the blacks and equal rights to all, was anything but in organized baseball. Black and white baseball had become an entrenched reality as a result of racial intolerance and misunderstanding that ran rampant throughout all levels of American society following the Civil War and into the 20th century. Let's learn a little bit more about that period of time to understand Jamestown's and Celoron's position as a large footnote in baseball history.
If anywhere in this world the social barriers are broken down, it is on the ball field. There, many men of low birth and poor breeding are the idols of the rich and cultured. The best man is he who plays best. In view of these facts, the objection to colored men is ridiculous. If social distinctions are to be made, half the players in the country will be shut out. Better make character and personal habits the test. New call.
African Americans, freed from slavery by the Civil War and filled with hope for a better future and freedom, soon found themselves prisoners again of white prejudice in the North and of Jim Crow laws in the South that segregated every aspect of their lives. Even games of baseball at an orphanage. But freed blacks formed their own baseball clubs in cities north and south. One of Frederick Douglass's sons played for a team in Washington, D.C. And more than 50 blacks played professional baseball alongside whites during the 1870s and 80s. But it was never easy.
Ball players do not burn with the desire to have colored men on the team. It is, in fact, the deep-seated objection to Afro-Americans that gave rise to the feet-first slide. The Buffaloes had a Negro for second base. He was a few shades blacker than a raven, but was one of the best players in the Eastern League. The players of the opposing team made it a point to spike this brunette Buffalo. They would tarry at second when they might easily make third, just to toy with the sensitive shins of the second baseman. The poor man played only 2 games out of 5. The rest of the time he was on crutches. Sporting life.
In 1884, the son of a black Ohio clergyman, Moses Fleetwood Walker, became the first African American to make it all the way to the majors. Walker joined the Toledo Blue Stockings of the American Association as a catcher and immediately ran into a wall of bigotry. The Irish pitcher, Tony Mullane, ignored Walker's signals because he said he wouldn't take orders from a black man. Cap Anson himself tried to have Walker ejected from an exhibition game, threatening not to play if they didn't get that nigger off the field. Anson only backed down when he realized he'd forfeit his pay if he really did walk out. At one game, the Toledo manager received a letter said to be from 75 determined men who threatened to mob Fleet Walker if he dared make an appearance. Walker kept playing. His brother, Welday, joined the team for a time. 1887 signaled the beginning of the end for black Americans in organized white baseball. When it seemed likely that the New York Giants would hire the black pitcher, George Stovey, Cap Anson made it clear that neither he nor any of his white stockings would ever play a team on which blacks were welcome.
Just why Adrian C. Anson was so strongly opposed to colored players on white teams cannot be explained. His repugnant feeling toward colored ball players and his opposition with his great power and popularity in baseball circles hastened the exclusion of the black man from the white leagues. Sol White.
Rather than face a revolt by Anson and other white players, the National League owners made a gentleman's agreement to sign no more blacks. The minor leagues followed suit, formally declaring that black players would no longer be welcome. Almost overnight, Moses, Fleetwood, Walker, and all the other black players disappeared from organized white baseball. A few years later, the United States Supreme Court itself would rule that racial segregation was legal everywhere. It would be 60 years before another black man played in the major leagues.
If I had not been quite so black, I might have caught on as a Spaniard or something of that kind. My skin is against me. Bud Fowler.
In 1890 and 1891, Jamestown was represented in the old New York Penn League. This is a league that preceded the league that the Jammers are in now, by a team, and the first baseman for that team was a man named R.A. Kelly. Kelly was a black man. He had played earlier in Danville, Illinois, in a league there, and the Jamestown papers, interestingly, never referred to the fact that he was black, but he was known to be black, and he was so identified in early sporting papers, but the Jamestown Evening Journal never mentioned it at all. Kelly, by the way, was quite a good player. I don't know how Jamestown made out in those two seasons in the New York Penn League.
Well, to answer the question, the 1890 team of Jamestown in the New York and Pennsylvania League, its first professional baseball team, was a pennant winner. The team was under the management of Herbert Whitney II and played its home games at Marvin Park. Who was Herbert Whitney II? And where was Marvin Park? Herbert Whitney II was the son of George Washington II, Jr., a noted president of the City National Bank of Jamestown, politician, and the organizer of the YMCA. Herbert Whitney II had married Cora Sheldon, who was the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Porter Sheldon. Porter Sheldon was a lawyer who subsequently retired to engage in the development of the American Aristotype Company in 1888. American Aristotype subsequently became part of Eastman Kodak. Jamestown baseball, 1890s. Where was it played? Marvin Park. Where was Marvin Park? An 1880 map of the city of Jamestown showed Marvin Park being west of Washington Street toward the boat landing. At various times, Marvin Park was used as a horse racing track. Due to its location, however, it was subject to the whims of the water level of the Chautauqua outlet, as well as the temperament of Mr. Warner, who had control of the dam as it ran through the city of Jamestown. Since this was the first season of professional baseball in Jamestown in an organized league, what was the reaction of the city? The first reference we find in the Jamestown Evening Journal of May 12, 1890. The baseball season. Everyone who can leave business and who is fond of the national game will next Thursday attend the opening of the league season by the Jamestowns and Oleans on Marvin Park. After 2 rain delays, the Evening Journal of the 16th announced prospects for a good game of ball at Marvin Park this afternoon are flattering. A great deal of interest is manifested in the city as to the outcome. In honor of the opening of the season in this city, the Jamestown Evening Journal's large flag has floated to the breeze all day. The opposition Olean team was greeted at the train station and took quarters at the Humphrey House. It was escorted there by a large delegation of Jamestown baseball enthusiasts. Ironically, there was a semi-pro team known as the Originals who played in Jamestown at this time. They played at Penfold Park. What's interesting to note that the Originals in 1890 established a new policy in the area that said, quote, "This year, the management promised that no intoxicating liquors will be allowed or sold on the grounds. Persons who want liquor must go to the hotel for it." Such were the days in the 1890s. Finally, on Friday, May 16, 1860, Jamestown's career as a league city was inaugurated. The headline cried, "Now we're off." Jamestown wins the opening game in the city of New York and Pennsylvania League. Kelly makes the first home run. Yes, sir, that's our guy, R.A. Kelly. In fact, his home run was described as follows. Nash cut out a single, and Kelly meandered up to the oyster. After looking over the pitcher's assortment of curves, he fitted one to the end of his bat and with a simple twist of the wrist, dropped it over the right field fence beside the Tippecanoe log cabin. The spectators stretched their vocal cords and cheered until the knots fell out of the grandstand siding while Kelly single-footed it around the bases. You gotta love the King's English. The article concluded, "If the ending of the season is as auspicious as the beginning has been, there will be no cause of complaint from the Pearl City. The home team won the initial contest of the season and won it upon the merits by virtue of the magnetism that the members of the club have stored up in their bat bags. How they did hit the ball. They injured the pitcher's feelings and made his fielder's foot sore, and loosened the cover of the bullet in almost every inning. When it comes to a technical knowledge of how to straighten out an outcurve or to spoil the beauty of an inshoot, they, Olean, clearly are not in with Roxburgh's aggregation." Thus was the beginning of a wonderful first season for Jamestown. R.A. Kelly got a new hat for making his first home run at Marvin Park. What about R.A. Kelly? The Society of American Baseball Research indicated that Richard Andrew Kelly was a Negro who played initially in Danville in Illinois and then in Jamestown for the years 1890 and 1891. He was born in March 1860, and he and his family lived in Plainfield, Indiana. A footnote indicates that Kelly arrived in Danville on the recommendation of Sam Thompson of Philadelphia. He received a flattering offer to play in St. Paul but could not leave on account of his business. This June 19, 1889 newspaper article indicated he was a fine catcher, a heavy hitter, and a good outfielder. His recommendation to the big leagues and professional baseball came from a pretty powerful source, Big Sam Thompson, who played with the Detroit Tigers and was a power hitter in an era when such players were looked down upon. He ultimately made it to the Baseball Hall of Fame. As early as 1885, Kelly is listed with the occupation as a barber in Hendricks County, Indiana. He was married and had one child at the time he came to Jamestown. In fact, Robert Peterson received correspondence from his daughter back in 1975. Daughter Lola recalls Jamestown when she states, "My mother and I were with him in Jamestown, New York, all the time he played on the team. I watched him, played often." This is a remarkable letter. In 1890, R.A. Kelly played the entire season as a first baseman. Ironically, he had only one home run, and that home run was in the first game of the season. He ended up with a .301 batting average with 21 doubles and 3 triples. Meanwhile, back to the pennant-winning season, Jamestown won frequently, and the Dunkirk Observer noted after an early victory, it has been a long time since an exhibition of playing as theirs has been seen here. Dunkirk was a particularly interesting town, as it was described as having the reputation of being the toughest town in the league. The rowdy element on the grounds runs the whole show and indulge in language and behavior that is calculated to keep respectable people away from the game. The management promises better things in the future, however. Dunkirk, in addition to being a tough town, also had a mascot. One day they arrived into town with a mascot, which was in the shape of a little Negro, black as the ace of spades, to whom they paid devoted attention. Stated that he seemed to accomplish about as much against the Jamestown Sluggers by sitting on the fence as did the Dunkirk team on the diamond. What an interesting way to have a mascot. The early season had problems with weather and drainage. The field got so bad that the local management had made arrangements with Farmer Warner whereby he will open up his mill dam tonight and keep it open Sunday, thus lowering the outlet water so there will be no interference on that score with the Erie-Jamestown game Monday. They also went on, the Jamestown Journal, referring to Marvin Park and an encouragement of the management that they should not delay in having the entire front of the grandstand protected by wire network. At present, there is an opening at each end of the stand and a wide opening at the top in the center through which foul balls often come so swiftly as to cause severe injury if one should strike a child. High water and grandstand improvements were not the only issues of the first year. There were so many postponements that the locals never knew whether the game was going to be played. Finally, the Jamestown Evening Journal indicated that when games are to be played on the grounds in the city, a flag will be hoisted there as notification. The 1890 season finally came to a close, and the Jamestown team was the pennant champion. The 1890 season was a memorable one for Jamestown, not only because it was the first professional team, the first professional champion, but also the place where one of the last black players in organized baseball played. Congratulations came in. The Olean Times said, Jimtown, the proud Pearl City at the outlet of the Classic Lake, has won the baseball pennant. Accept our congratulations. Herbert Whitney II, manager and owner of the Jamestown team in 1890, brought the team back again in 1891. The team also included in 1891 R.A. Kelly. Kelly batted .245 with 3 home runs that year. 1891 season was a split season, with Erie winning the first half and Jamestown winning the second half. After that season, R.A. Kelly returned to Indiana and retired from professional baseball. However, his 2 years in Jamestown left an indelible mark on the history of local baseball, as well as the history of black baseball and organized ball during that period of time. R.A. Kelly, in the national statistics, was listed as the only Negro playing here in his second year in Jamestown. After the 1891 season, the New York-Pennsylvania League disbanded.
It was patronized very largely, from what I have been able to find out, by people from Jamestown and the surrounding area. It was not terribly expensive. If you could afford the price of a trolley ride or a steamboat ride from Jamestown, that's all you needed. You didn't have to buy admission to the park. If you wanted to ride the giant Ferris wheel or the roller coaster types they had, some of those special events, it would cost 10 cents. But otherwise, you could sit in the midway and watch trapeze artists and balloon ascension, fireworks, band concerts, all sorts of entertainments just by sitting there and paying nothing.
It was the Coney Island of western New York, and that was established by the Broadhead family, who owned the steamboat lines and who owned some of those trolley lines also, along with some other things in the city of Jamestown, other industries. Chautauqua Lake was a tourist mecca just as it is now, but people came and stayed for the whole summer. The Broadhead family, the two sons of William, Elmed and Sheldon, who saw this tourist trade all around Chautauqua Lake at Chautauqua Institution, which was established at this time, and saw the need for these people of having something to do, besides just sit around and chat or play cards or whatever they would do. So they established this huge amusement park at Celoron. They had the Ferris wheel, the Phoenix wheel as it was called, and when it left Celoron Park, when that was closed finally, that Phoenix wheel went out to Sacramento, California, and was there until, it's perhaps 5 years ago or so that it burned there in California at the amusement park where it was there. But that was a huge thing. There were all sorts of the typical rides that any amusement park has.
And that's, I'm thinking, right around the turn of the century. There was a Ferris wheel, there was roller coaster rides. You could get in your bathing suit and go down the water slides. I think water slides are new for 1980. They're not. They were around a long time ago. Just fun things. They'd have music. They had a fountain that had lights and different colors that they would turn on at night. They had fireworks. They had a mini zoo. There was just a lot of things to keep people busy. There were baseball games. They had a baseball field out there, that kind of thing. So, you could spend the whole day there and just be really pleased with what you saw.
The Jamestown area was represented in the late 19th century by two other entries. Both were in a league called the Iron and Oil League, which was a minor league covering mostly small cities in northwestern Pennsylvania. An oil league went to Celoron in mid-season. They weren't doing very well in Sharon, and so the franchise was shifted to Celoron, and they played the rest of the season there, although in fact that league was in trouble too, and it disbanded in August. Basically, the teams broke up because they weren't drawing enough folks. That was not unusual, by the way, in those days. It was quite common for leagues to break up in mid-season. The thing that was interesting about the Iron and Oil League in 1895 was that it had the rookie Hannes Wagner, who went on to become one of the greatest of all baseball players. He was in his rookie season as a professional in that year. He played for Warren in Warren, Pennsylvania, in that league. So he would have played in Celoron on
Band. The headlines of August 28, 1895 says it all. The Celoron Club retires after a brief and disastrous existence. The article goes on to state the Celoron baseball team is no more. It laid down the axe at the feet of the Warrenites Tuesday and retired from the field forever. Its life was gentle and the elements so little mixed in it that its parting was as its birth, humbly at the bottom of the percentage ladder. Once or twice the team came out and won a game or two, but it finally gave up and died. As the only remaining teams, Warren and Wheeling played a World Series, with Wheeling winning in 1895. This team was an all-white team, and the first team, professional team, to play in Celoron, New York. In one of the early chapters of the book, Only the Ball Was White, Bob Peterson writes as follows: No league was open to the Negroes for the next 2 years. Then in 1898, a young all-Negro team wrote the final chapter to the story of black men and white leagues during baseball's early days. The team was organized by a brash white man named Harry Curtis, who promised that we will have the strongest colored club in America if we are the youngest. One of the interesting anecdotes occurred further on after their first game, where the Sporting Life wrote, Celoron drove home from here Saturday night, being their first home game, and they enlivened the air with singing, and they can sing as well as they can play. The Negroes are a jolly, gentlemanly crowd and an honor to the league. And often, and never seem to get on track.
Then, again, in the Iron and Oil League in the year 1898, the last black players were involved in organized baseball in that league until Jackie Robinson came along. A team called the Celoron Acme Colored Giants. They were quite a young team. They were none, as far as I know, were from Jamestown, and the promoter and manager of the team, whose name was Harry Bright, was not from Jamestown either. I'm not exactly sure where he was from, but he was not from Jamestown. I suspect that he was invited to come and represent Celoron in the Iron and Oil League by the operators of Celoron's amusement park. In any event, they played about 30 games there, the Celoron Acme Colored Giants.
The Celoron Acme Black Giants lost their first 4 games and finally won one on May 18, 1898. Giants took well-played game from the baseball players of Bradford Wednesday. Celoron starts upward. Such was the enthusiasm. But that brief enthusiasm was short-lived, as these headlines became all too frequent. Celoron loses another. As the fortunes of the baseball team floundered, so did the degree of coverage by the Jamestown Evening Journal. The season commenced with excitement and detailed coverage, including complete box scores. With mounting losses, the coverage was reduced to line scores, then mere notes in the paper, if anything. The Journal often complained, the manager makes no effort, apparently, to let the people know when a ball game is to be expected. Many people in the city would be present had they known a game was scheduled. One of the best games of the season for Celoron occurred on Memorial Day. The Celoron Park was formally opened that day. The Journal recounted, the Celoron Acme Giants and the Warren team played a game of baseball. It was an old-time, enthusiastic baseball crowd, and the enthusiasm of the crowd must have been communicated to the Celoron team, for they wrested victory from the Warren team after playing the best game of baseball that has been seen here this season. These type of headlines continue to appear. Celoron again takes the tail of the Oil and Iron League. June 18th said, one of the poorest exhibitions of ball playing ever witnessed on the Celoron grounds was given there yesterday by the home team when Oil City beat them 11-3. The Acme Giants won only 5 of their first 16 games and then went out and tried to hire some additional talent. The paper was even encouraging, even in defeat, when they talk about the Celoron team played a good game but was defeated. The Celoron Chocolates woke up yesterday and made a desperate effort to take a game from Bradford team, but their hard work was all in vain. Celoron was permanently placed in last in the standings in the Iron and Oil League. By early July, the Giants were planted solidly in the league cellar and were losing money. The prospects were dim for improvement on the field or in the box office. On July 5th, the Giants lost to Warren 12-4, and the next day, Jamestown lost 7-5. Finally, the word leaked out on July 8th, 1898, that the Celoron Giants were to disband. The Celoron Colored Giants, connected with the Oil and Iron Baseball League, disbanded Thursday. Bad playing and consequent poor patronage was the cause. The manager, Harry Curtis, disbanded the black team and attempted to raise a team from former college students. However, after a month, that team also was disbanded. Manager Fortney summed up the situation in the Jamestown area. Without a winning team in Jamestown, the sport will never be a success. And in order to have good players and get the best results from them, they must be paid at the time and the amount agreed upon. Otherwise, it will be a failure. People here want a team and baseball as a pleasure and recreation, if someone energetic enough would give it a little attention and money. This was a dreary postscript to the last season in which a number of blacks played in minor leagues. It would be 48 years from this date until once again Jackie Robinson would play in Montreal for the Brooklyn Dodgers. Segregation on the professional baseball scene would be the norm for nearly a half a century. Here are some other thoughts as to the significance of the Celoron team. David Kraft recently wrote a book entitled The Negro League, 40 Years of Black Professional Baseball in Words and Pictures. In his prelude, he stated, by 1898, the last traces of black players in organized baseball could be found in the Pennsylvania Iron and Oil League. The Acme-colored Giants, with an anemic one-loss percentage of 163, shut down operations in mid-season. With that team's demise, a turbulent, maddening period in organized baseball had finally given way to a slightly calmer but racially segregated period in which only whites could play at the minor and major league levels. Baseball Research recently put out a book edited by Dick Clark and Larry Lester entitled The Negro League's Book. In their preamble, they likewise referenced the last all-black team in the minor leagues was the 1898 Celoron, New York club of the Iron and Oil League.
Actually, his franchise folded before the league did, and he had to send all his players home, and whoever was the owner of the franchise brought in some white players from a disbanded team in Louisville, Kentucky, and they played as Celoron then for a couple of more weeks before the whole league disintegrated, and that was the last. Those were the last admitted black players in organized baseball until 1946, when Robinson joined Montreal in the International League as a rookie for the farm team of the Brooklyn Dodgers, now the Los Angeles Dodgers. To me, I grew up in Warren, Pennsylvania, and so I was aware of the Jamestown Falcons when they began play in the Pony League in 1939. I had an uncle, Godfrey Peterson, living in Jamestown, and he took me to one or two games. I'm not certain whether it would have been 1939 or 1940, but I'll tell you, I was really impressed by the stadium and by the players. They were all heroes to me. I was about 13 years old at the time and nuts about baseball. and I had a marvelous time at those games. I must confess that I really don't remember much about the team. I do remember a sort of a fire plug type man named Johnny Newman. He played the outfield, and he could hit the ball about 8 miles, although he didn't do it every time. As I remember, he struck out a fair amount. I think that team, either in 39 or 40, had Earl Rapp, who went on to become a major league outfielder, although I'm not certain about that. I could be wrong. Then after World War II, I remember that it had a couple of men on the team right after the war, I think probably 46 or maybe 47, Al Fedorov and Scooter Koshorek, who went up to the majors. I think Fedorov, I think, was with the Tigers, and my recollection is that Koshorek played infield for the Pirates for a couple of years. So I saw them too. I was enough of a fan that I got up there a few times immediately after the war before I went to college and left the area. And that pretty much covers my recollections of Jamestown baseball.
That Branch Rickey signed Jackie Robinson in 1946. What we might not know is the connection with Jamestown, New York. Malcolm was a native of South Dayton, New York, and in his early years traveled to Missouri, and his paths crossed with Branch Rickey, a fortuitous quirk of fate. For it was that life change which resulted in John Yocum becoming involved in baseball. John Yocum became close friends with the Rickey family, and in 1944 told Mr. Yocum to come to Brooklyn. John considered the offer carefully, but Branch Rickey Jr., also a bright and intuitive baseball mind, told Yocum, "Knowing you, I think you'd be happier if you had your own ball club." John answered, "I don't have any money." Branch Rickey Jr. replied, "You'll raise it." By the time V.J. Day swept through Jamestown in 1945, Harry Bisgeier, then its owner, was looking to move on from the Falcon operation, and Yocum bought the team for $22,500. This was the highest price paid for a Class D club at that time. His parents gave him $2,000. He had saved $5,000 more and borrowed the rest. After purchasing the team, he went to visit Mr. Rickey in the Brooklyn office. Let John tell you the rest.
Jackie Robinson, I was with Mr. Rickey the day he signed Jackie Robinson, but I didn't know that he was signing it. Branch Jr., his secretary's name was Mary, and he says, "I'm going in." She said, "You can't go in, Branch Jr." He said, "No," he said, "this is someone that's very close to us, and Dad will be happy to see him." So I went in, and there was this black man sitting there, and he introduced me to Jackie Robinson, but I had no idea that Jackie Robinson was going to be signed to a minor league contract. This was after Jackie Robinson left baseball. He became vice president of Chautauqua Nuts, and I got to know Jackie Robinson very well. And he told me that Chautauqua Nuts was in a bind because it's a one-product company, coffee, And he said, "We want to diversify," and I was supposed to be specialized in this. And I said, "I'll remember." And our firm had an exclusive on a winemaking company that was a gold mine. It was called Logan David Wine. And they got their grapes from here, and you could buy it for a very low sum, about $11 million, and they made over $1 million a year because I guess it was a must at certain rituals, So Logan Davis was always a big seller. And I called Jackie Robinson, and I came down. The guy's name was Black, who was chief executive officer, a very benevolent man. He gave New York University a lot of money, and I showed them the figures, and they said, "Hey, coffee to wine, that wouldn't be the right thing." And so he said, "I'm fearful." So I said, "Fine." And I called Paul Austin of Coca-Cola, and I said, "Paul, this is a great money maker." And he said, "I don't think we should get in wine. Now they're the biggest wine people in the world, in the United States. They bought all those wineries in California. They bought Taylor Wines here in Canandaigua." But it was funny that Jackie Robinson and I got to be good friends. When Mr. Rickey died, I went in the car with 2 daughters and 2 son-in-laws, and I sat with the Rickey family. There were 3 of us who were not members of the family: Jackie Robinson, Bob Cobb, who owned the Brown Derbies, he owned the Hollywood Stars, which was a farm club for the Brooklyn Doctors. The 3 of us sat with the family. And it's tragic what happened to Jackie Robinson because, you know, life is not fair, and it certainly wasn't fair in his case. The old-timers tell me he was the best athlete, better than Kenny Washington at UCLA. You know, he could do everything. And he was not the best black player at the time, but he was probably the most intelligent. And Mr. Rickey, what you've read in the paper is true. Mr. Rickey said you cannot retaliate, you know, for a period of time. And he said, we're going to send you down to Montreal. And the Montreal manager was a Southerner. He accepted Mr. Rickey's wishes. And Jackie had probably the greatest determination, you know, the motivation. Jackie wanted to be a great athlete. He was probably an overachiever, and that's where you get most of the successful people.
History of professional baseball. You bought the Jamestown franchise from Harry.
This guy.
Do you remember how much you paid for it?
Yeah, $22,500. And I bought a bus because we didn't have a bus. He had 2 station wagons. So I really had, I think I had about 30,000 in it, outside the 22. The only aside, Harry Biscayne agreed to sell the ball club for me for $20,000, and I agreed. And I was still in the Marine Corps when I came back from Washington. And then he said, well, here's an eager man. So he said, I changed my mind. He said, I need $22,500. And he said, you know, I told you I would exempt certain ball players. You can have all the ball players. I said, why? He said, well, we're giving ball players out right here. Everyone who's in the service, so you can have them. I said, well, Harry, you're right. I want to buy the ball club. So I gave him the $22,500. There's a ball player named Lyle Parkhurst, who was a local boy, a very crafty left-handed pitcher. He was a mature boy when he was 16. And so I get all the ball players. I'm still in the Marine Corps. I get a wire. Parker's drafted by Montreal. In those days, that's $1,200. So I got $1,200, and I sold 2 players. So I got the $2,250. So it's still $20,000.
Where was and what did Marvin Park look like? And here at the Great White Fleet Museum in Bemis Point is this photo, 1891 photo, which unbelievably shows the stadium. Here's the outlet as it looked in 1891, and up at the upper end of the outlet is a ball field. This is where R.A. Kelly would have played his games in 1890 and 1891, and the ballpark would be subject to the whims of Farmer Warner and his use of the dam.